Um, just to give you a recap of what we've been doing with the master classes, we took a poll and asked Rotarians as to what they would like to have covered in the master classes. And one of them was conflict, and we had Jim Halderman do 2 sessions on that. And then the other one was generational differences. So we searched around and we got Lisa's name. And so we asked her to present this. Lisa Hudson is the director of the Small Business Development Center at Lorain County Community College. She works with small and medium-sized businesses to accelerate their growth. Prior to coming to SBDC, Lisa worked in the banking industry, helping both consumer and commercial clients. Lisa holds a bachelor's degree from Alma College and an MBA from Lake Erie College. Lisa is certified business advisor through the University of Toledo, as well as a certified strategic workplace planner. Lisa is an alumna of Leadership Lorain County and sits on several nonprofit boards throughout the community. And Lisa is also a Rotarian with Elyria Sunrise. Now, with Lisa's work, she deals with a lot of companies that have problems with generational differences. So she's really gained a wonderful experiential learning knowledge of this, as well as her other endeavors. So I want to thank Lisa for joining us tonight, and will also be next month as well. So Lisa, I turn it over to you, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to see about sharing my screen here, and we'll get started.
There you go.
All right. So I want to get into a different view. Give me 1 second here. Oops. This wants to pop up all the time. Oh my gosh. Okay. Technical difficulties. It's because I'm not a millennial that I'm having technical difficulties. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? All right. Sure. Awesome. So, yeah, we're going to talk about generational differences. I put a slide real quick just for pure self-promotion of Ohio Small Business Development Centers. There are about 30 throughout the state of Ohio. So anywhere you are, there's probably one that services your area. And our mission is to accelerate Ohio's economy by helping people start, sustain, and grow their businesses. And we do that by working with clients one-on-one, offering workshops or small group settings. And the great thing is 99% of what we do for clients is at no cost. So we're a really great resource for anybody who's thinking about starting a business or already owns a business. There's my contact information, and I'm happy to send out these slides.
Lisa?
Yes.
We only have generational differences right now.
Oh,
if you go down to the bottom and click on, there's a little podium. I think that'll take you to the program. I can't see it right now. Let's see.
So you guys just see the generational differences slide?
Yeah, let me, I had to get out of it.
If you, on the side, you've got the list of screens. If you just click on one of those lists, it'll come up. Click on the second screen. Do you see the list of slides on the left?
No, because I switched it to view. Let me see display settings. Let me see what happens here.
There you go.
Oh, that works now?
Yeah.
I don't know what I did, but okay. So do you guys see a slide that says Ohio Small Business Development Center?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to switch slides and you tell me, do you see my contact information?
Right.
All right, yay. Thank you. So that's my contact information, and I'll make sure that Gary and Nancy get a copy of these if anybody wants them. We are active on social media. Feel free to follow us. And Business Fluent, that side, if any of you are podcast listeners, I do a podcast that's available on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to. And we just recorded our first episode of season 2 before this. So it's a fun way to get information. So generational differences or generation gap, the definition is the difference of opinions between one generation and the next. The time between generations is not an exact science. It's really a way to understand how global events, technology, economic and social changes interact to define the way a set of people see the world. An interesting fact is the time between generations is actually decreasing because of the rapid pace that technology is changing the world as we know it. So you'll see that digital transformation is really speeding up the changes in generations. As I go through this, you may see yourself in several of the generations. You might connect to one more than your own. And that's very common because these are very broad generalizations about people, and a lot of things can really impact how people act and think. So someone might be in one generation by date of birth, but because of their geographic location, their family background, their economic background, may really act, think at like more of a different generation. And so that's very common. Again, these are very broad generalizations as we go through this. So currently there are 6 generations. The first is seniors, or more commonly called traditionalists. These are people born prior to 1945. And I will say that dates on generations are not always consistent. So depending on where you look, the years that one starts and then the next one begins can vary. So I tried to use dates that were the most commonly referred to, but just in case you start doing research on your own or find something, there might be slight variations. Baby boomers are 1946 to 1964. Gen Xers, 1965 to 1981. Gen Y, or more commonly referred to millennials, are 1982 to 2000. Gen Zs are 2001 to 2010. And our newest generation is Generation Alpha, which is 2010 till the present. And we're gonna talk a little bit more detail as we go through this. So can people put, based on these dates of birth, you don't have to put your date of birth, but put what generation you fall into in the chat for me so we can kind of see who we have with us. FYI, I'm a Gen Xer, but I'm 1966. So I'm at the very beginning. So I'm right on the border of baby boomers and Gen Xers. So a couple Gen Xers, baby boomers. All right. No millennials on here? All right. Well, so we can talk badly about all those younger generations. No, I'm just kidding. All right, great. So we'll start to dig a little bit deeper into each of them. So traditionalists, they are really impacted by the Great Depression. A lot of them have military experience, either themselves or within their family. And one of the things that define them, they're good at delayed gratification. Interestingly enough, this generation is also the most trusted by millennials. Millennials really respect this generation and want to learn from them. So if you think about when you're setting up work groups or organization groups, really connecting millennials to traditionalists is a great combination. And, you know, I might talk about workplace and employees just because that's the work I do a lot, but you can always substitute organization members. It all kind of applies the same. So, and the one thing I didn't mention, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go along. And if not, we'll answer them at the end. Baby boomers. Baby boomers are still the most influential generation overall that we have in the country. They have the greatest amount of work experience. They tend to hold the highest levels of our corporations and organizations. And they also tend to have the greatest majority of capital and wealth still in our country. So don't write off baby boomers yet. They really are measured by work ethic. Like they are the workers. Gen Xers, we are naturally skeptical. We want to see that we aren't going to trust organizations or people. Actions speak louder than words. We're very loyal to individuals, but not necessarily organizations. And we'll see some of the things that impact us later on. And we're really waiting for baby boomers to retire. So, you know, because baby boomers are working longer and great healthcare and the health craze. People are active in life longer than before. And so you have this whole group of Gen Xers, which is also one of the smaller generations, kind of stuck in that mid-tier, waiting for baby boomers who hold a lot of the senior positions to retire for them to move out. We might be one of the only generations not to have a president because by the time the next president rolls around, millennials might step in. So I kind of joke that we're like the Prince Charles of generations. You know, Prince Charles' mother has been queen forever, so he's probably not going to get to be king. It'll go to his son. So although COVID has really changed some of this, and COVID really a lot of baby boomers who otherwise may have continued working did retire during COVID. So curious to see what happens over the next year or two with that. So millennials or Gen Y. Millennials is really the preferred terminology, but if you hear that Gen Y terminology, it's the same as millennials. They came of age in a period of economic expansion, and they really hope to be the next great generation. So I mentioned they really respect traditionalists, which are also known as the greatest generation. They really, really hope to have that kind of impact. They are the most influential generation right now on the market and workplace. They are just coming into the age that they prime time of their career, prime buying years. So right now they're the most influential. Gen Z, they're the masters of technology, although they're not like Gen Alpha, which was like born basically with a screen in their hand. For most of their life, they have been digital. They're great multitaskers. And many of the jobs that they will have in their adulthood have not even been created yet. So it's kind of interesting to see what kind of Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things, what kind of jobs will be created for them as they move into their prime working years. Gen Zers are very entrepreneurial, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Gen Alpha. So for this generation, we switched to the Greek alphabet for a couple reasons. One, we kind of use Z with the last generation and kind of like hurricane and tropical storms. When you use all the letters in the alphabet to name a storm, you move to the Greek alphabet. But also they're really something new. You know, we don't know what the impact of being digitalized from birth is going to have on this generation. But they are predicted to be the largest generation in history, even to outdo baby boomers. So they're the generation to watch. So traditionalists, right now, they're ages 96 through 76. They were shaped again by the Great Depression and World War II, and kind of how events shape a generation. It's usually like large events, but there are also events that impact a generation kind of when they're old enough to know, maybe to be fearful and uncertain about an event, but young enough that their mind is still being, and their attitudes about things are being shaped. So that's kind of how those identifying events are determined. Traditionalists are really the last generation to pass on those traditional family values, you know, kind of the a mother and a father and 2 kids in the suburbs with the husband working and the mom in the kitchen, like kind of all those, when you think about traditional family values, they're really the last generation that believed in them. Some iconic traditionalists are Bob Dole, Jack Welch, Martha Stewart, and Tom Brokaw. There's you know, there's lots of influential people in this generation. They're also known as the silent generation and the greatest generation. Their tech influences, radio and TV came into being in the prime of this generation. So those are kind of where they are from a tech standpoint. Some of the characteristics that they're known for is the strong work ethic. They really trust that traditional hierarchy structure and authority. They understand the importance of sacrifice, probably because they lived through the Great Depression and World War II. And their economic MO is kind of save and pay cash. So that's the traditionalists. And you can see by their age that, you know, this is the generation that's that because of their aging are kind of going to be shrinking. Baby boomers, age 75 to 57, kind of an interesting fact. This generation has the highest divorce rate and highest rate of second marriages in history. And again, it kind of goes into fact with what was happening in history. They were really shaped by the post-World War II optimism, the Cold War. They also had the hippie generation, and they created the yuppie movement, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Some famous baby boomers are Bill Clinton, Meryl Streep, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, just to name a few. They're also known as the me generation and the moral authority. Tech influences, so they are the biggest consumers of that traditional media, so radio, television, newspapers, but about 90% also have a Facebook page. Part of what drives that is they want to stay connected with their children and families, and their children and families are more tech savvy, so they get on social media to connect that way. Some of the things important to them, they created the anti-war movement and the equal rights movement. They're really focused on personal gratification, and their money mantra is spend now, worry later. So if you think about like the 1980s and that whole kind of conspicuous consumption movement, or I'm going to show you a clip. One of my favorite movies is Wall Street. Anybody know the movie Wall Street? If the clip works here, oops, maybe. Well, I don't think my clip is going to work, but that's okay. Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. Oh, maybe it's going. No, it's not going to go. Try one more thing. Oh, it's gonna go.
The new law of evolution in corporate America seems to be survival of the unfittest. Well, in my book, you either do it right or you get eliminated. In the last 7 deals that I've been involved with, there were 2.5 million stockholders who have made a pre-tax profit of $12 billion. I am not a destroyer of companies. I am a liberator of them. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA.
So, yeah, that's a very famous line. Greed is good, and that kind of identifies the whole corporate greed 1980s, and that's really identifying of the baby boomers. So, all right, Gen Xers, age 56 to 40. So, you know, I announced my age on this, so I'll have to like have you all take the vow of silence and not share my age with everyone. They're the first generation that did not do as well as their parents financially. We were shaped by events such as Watergate. We were latchkey kids. So if you remember, we said baby boomers had the highest rate of divorce. So in single mom households or 2 working parent households, the latchkey kids, you know, both parents were working, they came home to an empty house and stayed home. It was also a time of corporate downsizing and the energy crisis. Some famous Gen Xers are Elon Musk, Jay-Z, Tiger Woods, Jennifer Aniston. And I put Kamala Harris with a question mark because she was actually born in 1964. So depending on what resource you use, she is either the last year of a baby boomer or the first year of Gen Xers. So I'm going to claim her as a Gen Xer. So some traits that are important are balance, so that work-life balance, being independent, suspicious of boomer values. You know, we saw a lot of the things that boomers believed were important really fall apart in our lifetime. So being suspicious of those boomer values. You know, maybe greed isn't so good. Maybe being corporations and shareholders profit are not the most important things in life. And again, they have a lack of loyalty to organizations. Gen Xers are the last generation to bridge the divide between the analog and digital world. So we weren't born with cell phones and internet, but it was created like as we moved into adulthood. Generations also known as slackers, post-boomers, and 13th generation. So that's Gen Xers. Millennials. So I hear a lot of people use the word millennials to refer to any generation under Gen X, but technically Gen Xers are between the ages of 39 and 21. They were the first generation of children who were highly scheduled. So, you know, You know, they were children of boomers and Gen Xers. And so we enrolled our kids in soccer and baseball and t-ball and, you know, gymnastics. But they're also the most highly educated generation overall. Events that shaped their lives are the onset of digital media, the AIDS crisis, 9/11, and terrorist attacks. So they have a very strong sense of civic duty. They definitely feel like they are part of a global society. They are much more tolerant than previous generations, and they're very self-confident. Some famous millennials are Kim Jong-un of South Korea, Malala, who from Afghanistan, Britney Spears, and LeBron James. So all across the board. Interesting, this generation, 44% are minorities. And they don't see diversity until it's absent. So if they walk into an event and it happens to be all white male, that will really stand out to a millennial. But if it's a mix of women and people of color, they won't think twice about it. It's only when it's absent that it seems odd to them. Some people will call millennials tech savvy. They're not really tech savvy as a whole, but they're tech dependent. So they really maybe rely on their computer and their phone, but they don't know anything about it. So now some of the other generations we'll see are much more tech savvy, but in general, millennials, although tech dependent, are not tech savvy. Gen Z, they're ages 20 to 11. And so they're really just moving in to the workforce. They are shaped by COVID-19. So for some of the people, I mean, you have to imagine COVID obviously impacted all of us, but this generation, they're in those prime formative years and COVID hit. Also the social justice movement, the climate change, and the recession of 2008. So not a lot of positive things. So this generation has a lot of mental health challenges. A lot of it is caused by the sense of isolation because of the digital world. They're also exposed. I mean, they can get news 24/7 on any topic, and they internalize that. And so it leads to a lot of mental health challenges. They're also called the loneliest generation. And some of that is due to their, you know, here's the thing, technology, it connects you to the world, but makes you alone all at the same time. So it's great because you have access to everything, but you're doing it alone. So it can create a sense of loneliness, of that comparison to others. So yeah, a lot of mental health challenges. They are tech addicted. You know, they know YouTube, they know all the social media platforms. Their lives have really revolved around technology. They're very financially minded because they have seen their parents struggle, whether it's through the recession or COVID. They're very pragmatic, and they have a strong sense of obligation and responsibility for helping the world become a more equitable place. So, yeah. Some famous Gen Zers, you know, it's funny, I was looking through this and I realized like some of these people, I had no idea who they were. But Greta Thunberg, she did a lot about, you might know her about the global warming. Zendaya is a performer, Billie Eilish is a performer, and Brock Crouch is a snowboard person. So in case you didn't know who all those people were, but like me, didn't know them all, but they're the famous Gen Zers. Just some other things, thought this was a cute graphic. They're committed. They are not materialistic, and they're more interested in making the world a better place. Obviously, heavy social network users. The internet has been part of their lives since their first day. They don't really know a world without it. One interesting fact is they are turning formal education on its head. They are more interested in vocational training, particularly in technology, which is great. Where I feel like as boomer parents or Gen Xers of our millennial kids, they, we really drove them into four-year colleges. But Gen Zers, they see, like they're questioning, should I take on college debt? Are there ways I can have a career path without that traditional college path? It's much more open to it than millennials were. They really like to think out of the box and challenge things and be knowledgeable in lots of different areas. They are worried about finding jobs and opportunities, and so that they are searching, and they are less prejudiced. They very tolerant generation. Generation Alpha, our newest, ages 11 to 0. This generation is, like I think people say that millennials were spoiled and Gen Zers were spoiled, but not like Gen Alpha. They have more material things than any other generation. These are the children of millennials, and they're driving who are social media influencers because that's all they know. So it's interesting that this generation started in 2010. That happened to also be the year that the iPad was introduced. It's weird to think that the iPad is not that old. App was the word of the year in 2010, and Instagram was created. So everything about that year is tech. They are tech immersed. They so much so that voice recognition and video are their preferred ways to engage with tech. They don't even want a keyboard and to read. They want video and voice recognition. So very interested. They will probably be shaped by COVID, but we don't know what else will shape them over the coming years. And one thing I will say about COVID is really it is the first world impacting event since World War II. So, some of the other things were specific to United States, but World War II and COVID really impacted the world. So I think we're gonna see the impact that COVID is having on these younger generations for many years to come. So Generation Alpha, overindulged, but probably due to all the digital use of digital, they're going to have very short attention spans. So, but we don't really know. I mean, it is going to be interesting as this generation gets older to see what happens. So again, just a little graphic. Some characteristics about Gen Alpha: they're mobile, global, visual, digital, and social, right? So they were born from 2010. A couple other social markers besides COVID are the Trump presidency and the disruption that happened during that time, and Brexit. They're probably going to be driving autonomous cars. Iconic toy, fidget spinners. Many of you have kids or grandkids that use the fidget spinner. So again, it kind of speaks to the short attention span. Their musical devices are smart speakers. They can listen to anything, anytime, anywhere in the world. Yeah, so their learning style, obviously virtual. The one thing that cracked me up is who influences them and who they get their advice from: chat bots. Like I hate chat bots when I'm on a web page, but for this generation, it's going to be the go-to, and they want marketing in real time. So kind of interesting. So again, top drivers, and I put employee engagement, but it really is, could be organization engagement. For traditionalists make up 2% of the workforce. They're motivated by respect, recognition. They want to feel like they're adding long-term value to a company. Their preferred communication is kind of that handwritten, face-to-face, over email. Some of their beliefs is age equals seniority, and that you need to advance the hierarchy of the company. So if you want to engage this employee, you really need to make sure that you're providing satisfying work with opportunities to feel that they are contributing, and that the organization provides stability. Baby boomers, they make up 25% of the workforce. Their drivers are company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. They prefer communication, whatever is most efficient, email, phone calls, face-to-face. And their philosophy is pay your dues and you need to sacrifice for your success. So provide specific goals and deadlines, but have them mentor, have them pass on their expertise. So there's something happening right now in workforce that is coming, and it's been coming, and we've talked about it a lot, which is called the Gray Tsunami. So you have all these industries like manufacturing, insurance, medical, that have a large number of baby boomers hanging on, but they're going to retire. And so they're taking all that organizational knowledge with them. So how do you engage those younger and attract those younger workforce? So, and it's happening in organizations too. So, I mean, when you look at whether it's Rotary or chambers of commerce or any kind of those other service industries, there's a large number of aging members. And so what do you do as they leave and disengage, and how do you attract those younger members? So Gen Xers, they represent 33% of the workforce. So you can see they're probably the largest segment right now. They really want that work-life balance. They want their personal goals over the company goals. They want to are comfortable communicating whatever is most efficient. They also are quick to move if their personal goals aren't met, because remember I said they have very low loyalty to an organization. Gen Xers want immediate feedback. They want flexible work arrangements and extended opportunities for personal development. Millennials, 35% of the population. So you can see how that Gen X is getting, although Gen X is a large portion, millennials are a bigger thing. So I said how they are really missing that opportunity to move into those senior positions. We'll see what happens as the Gray Tsunami continues. And are people going to give Gen Xers an opportunity to move in, or are they going to promote those millennials over the Gen Xers? So it should be interesting to watch. But millennials are motivated by a sense of responsibility. They really want their managers to be good managers and people they can emulate and respect and trust. And they like unique work experiences. They prefer to communicate via IM, instant messages, text, and email. And they are seeking challenge and growth development, and they want to have fun at work. If you think about some of the companies that are always like rated best places to work, they have those great big break rooms and bring your animals to work, and, foosball machines and, all kinds of fun stuff. Well, they're working hard to attract those younger generations. Again, they like immediate feedback. They want to get to know their companies on the personal level, have flexible schedules and work assignments. And Gen Zers, so remember, the oldest Gen Zers are 20, so they're starting to enter the workforce. And what motivates them? Diversity. They like things to feel personalized and individualized for them, and they want a creative environment. Their communication is instant message, text, and social media. They're okay. Like they do not see separation between like social medias for personal, not work. Like it's all connected to them. It's their life. They want to be independent. They want innovative coworkers and enjoy like where they can try out new technologies. So you want to, and because they have short attention spans, you want to offer an opportunity where they can work on multiple projects, that they can have work-life balance and really be self-directed in their work. So I kind of put what motivates millennials, but again, this kind of applies to all younger generations. They want a sense of belonging. They want to know that the organization treats them like a person, not a number. They want interesting, challenging work that helps them grow. They want to be with a boss and coworkers that they like. They want to feel like they're making progress, and they want a mission or purpose that they believe in. So millennials and younger generation are visual learners. YouTube is their #1 resource for information. So, you know, since I work with a lot of business owners, I tell them, if you're not on YouTube, you are not connecting with that younger audience. Millennials and younger too, they're not linear thinkers. Like you go from step A to step B, they're very outcome oriented. So a lot of times if you can show them what you want the outcome of a project to be and help them work backwards, that their minds work much better that way than start with step A, then go to step B. They want to know what the end result is. One thing, and we were talking about this a little before, that millennials are adulting later. And so a lot of what people talk about about younger generations, it really is applicable when they are in younger phases of their life. But as millennials are getting older, so the oldest ones are now 39 or 40, depending on when you're cut out, and they're moving up in their careers, they have families. So people were really worried that millennials were not going to buy homes, and we're going to have this huge inventory of suburban homes on the market. Well, you can see that's not what is happening, right? There's a housing shortage for lots of reasons, but one of them are now millennials are in a place in their life that they want the house with the kids in the suburbs. So it's not that they never wanted those things. They're just doing it a little later in life than some of the earlier generations. And I think you'll see that happen. So some of this is just because we haven't seen those generations get to a more established place in their life. So again, they like to communicate via text, email. When you're emailing, make a subject line that's interesting, more likely to get engagement, and of course, social media. So what attracts younger audiences? So whether you're hiring or looking for members, your presence, online presence, is the only thing that drives younger audiences. So are you conveying your mission? Are you conveying what the culture and values of your organization are about? As you incorporate, do the younger generations understand your corporate branding? Who are your social media influencers? And if you don't know what social media influencers are, they're people who will talk about your brand on social media platforms that really aren't necessarily an employee or part of your organization. So when Kim Kardashian promotes a diet shake on her social media, so you're leveraging that influencers followers, but they're promoting your product. And I mean, that's it's interesting, but a study, and I don't know the exact numbers or who did this study, but I read it someplace, that when a company went and asked school-age children what they wanted to be when they grow up, a vast majority said YouTube, a YouTube star. So I don't know if any other generations thought YouTube star was going to be a viable career option, right? So it's interesting. but the other people that younger audiences trust are family and friends. So just kind of interesting. We're almost done here. So if anyone has questions, we can get to those. Gen Zs, again, age 20 and under, they're all about the phone. They think it's okay to use the phone any occasion, any place. They can't remember a time without social media. They're better at multitasking than previous generations. They're more entrepreneurial, but they want to work. I mean, you will see that this generation really will probably connect with the gig economy. You might have heard that phrase, where they're really, maybe they don't work for one company, like that 9-to-5 job, but maybe they have a contract with company X, and then they have a contract with company Z, they do the work, maybe then they don't take another contract for a while, but they're really that they're comfortable with that gig type of work. Many want to work in an office when they're asked, but it's interesting that the majority work in service type industries. But I think that's also one of those things, they're age 20 and under. So those, a lot of times those are the jobs, right, that teenagers have, are in restaurants and service type and retail settings. They really are searching for mentors in their life. They're self-motivated. They like the traditional benefits of a job, but they're willing to give it up. If you're doing any marketing for your organization or your company, 100% of every generation said that they would surf the web on their phones looking for a better price when they're in a retail store or speaking with a salesperson face to face. 100%. So make sure if you have a website or a landing page that it is mobile optimized. The world is controlled by the phone, and I'm always shocked how many times I'll search for something and it's not mobile optimized. So if it's not, make sure it is. And I think that's all I have. Yeah. Oh, I'll stop share. But when you get the things, one of the resources I used is the Center for Generational Kinetics, and they have a lot. If this is a topic that interests you, they have a lot of information, but there's a lot of information about the different generations out there. It's really fascinating. There's a lot of cool work being done on how each of the generation influences marketing. So yeah. So are there any questions?
Lisa, this was very, very informative. Thank you so much.
Oh,
You know, before we can start overriding the different or combining or connecting with the different generations, we got to know what we're dealing with. And
Right.
This was a perfect start. So I want to thank you so much. So does anybody have any questions?
From the chat, I just want to bring up when you were talking about, COVID, and Don had a cute sort of line saying COVID boomers for that generation.
Yeah.
I second Gary on that. I thought the presentation was excellent. One of the issues that I have been dealing with and have dealt with is communicating between the generations. Of course, being of the older one grouping, I'm just direct and like, here's the information, and I don't soften it for how it might be received on the other end. And I was talking to a colleague, and she said that when OSU sends out their letters for, from the development department for gifting to the university, they send out one letter to those basically over 40, and they send out another letter separate to the under 40 because of the way they receive information differently. The older ones want content. They want a long letter with lots of information, and the under 40 want the quick sound bites. They don't want to go through a lot of
They might not even want a letter. They might want a text.
Right. So it's also been brought up that if you get something from an older generation, a younger generation might find that offensive, saying, well, that is insulting to think that they can invite us in, as though that they were the superior group sending an invitation. And so if there's that much sensitivity, how do we deal with that?
You know, I'm not sure if there's that much sensitivity. I think the sensitivity doesn't come so much from a generational perspective. I think it can come more from like a gender or a racial perspective. You know, when either a population feels marginalized, it can seem kind of condescending that you're being invited. I don't see that so much from a generational perspective, but definitely from a gender and or racial perspective, I think you can see that. But I think understanding, you know, I mean, I see my daughter, she's the low end of a millennial, and like, she doesn't even go to her mailbox and get her mail on a regular basis. Like, that's just because she's like, anything I really want, someone's going to email me or text me. Like paper mail is not relevant. She's like, all my bills I pay online. They're not sending me bills. Like, I don't need something in the mail. So unless like she knows it's like her birthday or something and someone might send her some money, mail is not her primary mode of communication. But I think you're exactly right, Nancy. I mean, like, there's no time to read like a long-winded letter. And you know, the whole thing is the social media presence. And I see this with a lot of organizations, and Rotary is being one on them. They have limited social media presence, and what they do have is not very represent a diverse population of members, a diverse types of charities and things that they support. And I think we have to be really careful on when you're looking at the number one ways younger generations get their information is YouTube. I don't even know if Rotary is on YouTube, to be honest. I'd have to go and search. But not only are we on there, but what kind of message are we conveying? So I think a lot of organizations and a lot of companies don't take that piece as seriously as they should.
We have a question from
Nathan.
Nathan, yes. You want to read that, Gary?
Sure. Question I have is about the baby boomers. Who the baby boomers most appreciate? Do they connect well with anyone specific?
Not that I've done really specific research for, but I think a lot of times you see this between baby boomers and some of the younger generations is a disconnect in their values. You know, that a lot of times baby boomers will say like they don't want to work hard. They don't believe in capitalism. And so I think sometimes the baby boomers, in particularly with some of the younger generations, they do have some value problems in that they value different things. And again, these are vast generalizations, because I know plenty of younger generations that want to make money, and I know plenty of boomers that want to do good in the world. But in general, when you look at some of those values, they are in opposition with each other.
Nathan went on to say the greed is good guy may make money, but he or she could also come off as a know-it-all. As one not in that age group, I find them hard to connect with unless what I am doing is somehow supporting their causes. And that's very interesting. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that to some extent, Nathan. And again, if you look at some of the organizations who's leading them are boomers, and sometimes they do not want to hear that, the new ideas, whether it's from Xers, Yers, or Xers. So. And I certainly, and sometimes I think when people talk about generations, it's really easy to jump on the stereotypes, and usually those stereotypes are negatives. And I certainly don't mean to do that, because like I said earlier, these are very broad generalizations, and there are most people will see connections with multiple generations. So.
I think the challenge is the focusing on self versus focusing on others. And how do I start to see others, their challenges, their objectives, their cares, their needs, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, and not be so focused on myself. So that's no matter what generation I'm in, is that. But I know myself, when I connect with my grandson, I have to join him with what he's doing. I have to seek out and really, and I am truly appreciative and enjoying it, but I really am with him and he's showing me what he's doing. Now he's 12. So, but I mean, this is, I don't care whether it's a 12 or whatever age, how do I get interested in others, I think is a challenge for us all.
Yeah, I think the impact that Generation Z and Alpha are going to have on traditional American life, like we know it, is going to be interesting, because I know like professional sports are really seeing downturns because, a lot of the younger generations, they didn't grow up going to baseball games, and that's, they'd rather watch a YouTuber. And so, I think some of those things that have been quintessential Americana might change over time. And I think it's going to be hard for some of the older generations to see some of those things maybe go by the wayside a little bit. So, like I know kids, they would rather like play the Xbox football than go to a football game, right? So, colleges are offering scholarships for good gamers. Like, who would ever thought that a kid could get a scholarship because they're really good at a video game, right? It's just really fascinating to me. And like I said, I just don't think we are ready to see the impact of digitalization. So I've been talking too much today. And technology is having on our everyday life.
Lisa, I think that's actually kind of funny, because I just heard, so I'm in New Albany, and we actually have a digital gaming team in the high school. And I think they went to like states or something like this. And I was just like, at the school, like it's a sport, it's like extracurricular, it's very interesting. And I just took my kids, I have, my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 10, and I've got two others in between there. I just took them to their very first Clippers game this past summer, and they had 7th inning stretch, and my kids looked at me like, what is going on? They had no clue. And I was like, clearly I have not done my American parent duty and taking these kids to ball games. Like, it was just really funny.
Yeah, I mean, that's kudos to your high school that they have that gaming team. And, and I think, in previous generations, we might have looked at those kids like as like the nerdy kids that, like the computer nerds, and it's like now it's much more acceptable. I mean, there are YouTube influencers that's all they do is like the kids watch other kids play games. Like they don't even play the game themselves. They watch other kids play the game.
Games, open presents.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, sometimes I look at what my little nieces are watching. I'm like, what are you doing? So it's definitely a world that is new to us.
Dawn, we definitely need you part of producing some questions for us for part 2 of this generational differences, because you have access through your kids to some of those challenges. We're trying to, and this is, I'm throwing it out to all of you, we're trying to come up with a list of questions to create some kind of a game show for the next part 2 of the generational differences that Lisa will moderate. And one thought was to have just a series of questions and say, guess that generation. And so we just need to come up with lots and lots of questions that we can use for that period that hopefully will make it fun.
And if we could, try to relate it to your issues within your Rotary clubs,
Yes. You know, part of
the
this
generational differences.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is an interesting conversation because like I said, although mine kind of had a workforce focus, it really applies to Rotary and service organizations. And so I would love to hear some specific issues maybe your club has had, and they're probably all going to be very similar. But
one of them is
In
clearly
New Albany, what we're kind of going through, we have a couple of members who are in their 20s. And as they're kind of coming in, like one of the things that they brought up to me, I'm the president in New Albany, is the invocation. That's just seen as very old and archaic and old fashioned and to some people offensive. And so I've kind of moved away from that, you know, like we've skipped it a couple times. And is it right or wrong? You know, obviously you could debate that on either side, but as you move into having like these younger generations who are more open to different ethnicities and genders and preferences and things like that, I can see where it could be seen as offensive, right? So are clubs willing to make those kind of shifts in our traditions to be a place where younger generations want to come and be a part and associate with us?
We've had something where I'm going to guess this member, I'm in Lancaster, Ohio's Rotary, and we've had senior spotlights is what we've called it. I haven't done this. I've just been able to enjoy it as I've been coming into the club. And a fellow who's probably in his early 50s, so a little bit older than me, but still kind of in the middle age of the room too, sits down and like a news type, I don't know, interview, asks one of the members who's been members longest very interesting questions. And so in almost the exact same way that you talked about, Dawn, but in the reverse, we are all given, like, for instance, the last one that was interviewed was the first woman to join our club and what that was like for her. And so like people in my generation were like really listening, and she was like, it was no big deal. Like, you're making it a bigger deal than you think it was. I was received right away, this, that, and the other. But thinking about a whole room full of mostly men, but then a couple women being in it, that alone is really, it was like that. Because growing up when I did in the 80s, I've always thought women and men did the same kinds of things, including clubs. But yeah, this senior spotlight thing has been very informative for me, just at how much things have changed over the course of time. So in some ways you can learn from those who've been around the longest in your club as well.
Well, and I think that's how you have to approach either any generation, whether it's a younger generation approaching an older generations approaching, yet you have to come with that sense of respect and not you suck, right? I mean, you know, and that you're doing this wrong, let us fix it. On either, that's, I think, when people get offended. And sometimes it's hard for when you only have a couple 20-year-olds, because any kind of feedback they get sometimes seems like, oh, you've been doing it wrong all the time. So I think it's very careful how those messages are given and received. But I think if you look at the Rotary four-way test and know that people are working together with the best intentions, that, you know, some of that goes away too. But ultimately it's just knowing that you're approaching each other with respect and good intentions. Not that there won't be moments of frustrations on both parts, right? So, but it's definitely interesting, and I do think a lot of Rotary's problems, if there's a problem or struggle to attract younger generations, is purely their messaging, because a part of it, you saw that a lot of the younger generations do have that sense of being a global citizen and want to do well. And that's really Rotary's mission. And it's just connecting them to the mission in a way that they can really relate to. And I think sometimes Rotary doesn't do a good job of that. So I think that's what our clubs need to work on, is focusing on that mission and how we present it. Even like on social media, if you look at some clubs, like who's in the pictures of all the social media is, you know, white men over 60, you know, or even like the causes sometimes that we support are very traditional, not some of the, I don't want to say newer nonprofits, but, you know, I think like just being more intentional about those things to show diversity in membership, diversity in causes, diversity in the events that we do can help attract those younger people. Because if we don't do a better job, there's a lot of clubs that are going to have very limited membership in the next few years. So it's self-serving to change some of these things.
I'm finding, sorry, I know we're probably going over, Gary, you probably want to wrap it up. I'm just finding it's hard at my age to be as engaged as I would like to be, right? Because we're in a stage of life where our kids are doing all this stuff and we're going nuts with that. So it's kind of like, I understand why it's all these, you know, retirees in pictures, or, you know, maybe some younger people in pictures, but that's kind of where I'm at. I love Rotary. It's hard to do as much as I would like to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of clubs are looking at like some of the standards, like, does it have to be a weekly meeting? Does it have to be, you know, do we have to do the same 6 events we've done or whatever every year? Are there other maybe less labor intensive things that could be done that, you know, I think even that, to engage people in a different way can be looked at. You know, I think someone just has to be willing to kind of flip some of these on their head and ask the questions and see what it looks like if we do things a little differently. Not to change the mission and all the outcomes, because there's good work being done. They've done incredible work around the world. And so you don't want to undermine that, but at the same time, are there ways that we can look at things differently? And I think that's the balance that we all have to kind of try to find.
I just to sort of summarize that, I was speaking to my priest when I lived in California at the church where I attended, and one woman was complaining about, you know, the children making noise in the church, and he said, look out around you. If there are children there, if you don't see children, it's a dying church. So you need to bring new members in. I mean, that's just a fact, and it's how I like the idea of the messaging. And Dawn, I'm impressed. You're president of your club and you're handling kids and all of that. So I think you're doing really well. That's a lot to carry.
Yeah, you're inspiring me, because I've been tossing around the president idea for my club, you know, like, yeah, because I'm kind of at that stage where it's like, okay, I've complained enough. And if I'm kind of at the thing, if complaining without taking any action is not how I choose to live my life. So I either have to quit complaining or take some action. So Dawn, you're very inspirational.